What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be reviewing the 1990 Sam Raimi gothic superhero film, Darkman. Darkman stars a young Liam Neeson, well, younger than the Liam Neeson we're used to. And you know, I think he's good in the movie. He plays this character very well. I guess it's just, to me, it's like odd when you kind of have a movie that's like this, sort of a cult movie. Although it did, I guess, mildly pretty well at the box office. But it's just so, like, nobody really talks about it, like it's not on like anyone's like top 5 or anything too much. It's kind of like really forgotten. I think it's just not something that sticks out in time. It kind of aged, I suppose, with a lot of like 80s and 90s movies, but this doesn't stick out as like a Liam Neeson film, because most people think of like Star Wars Episode 1 or the Christopher Nolan Batman movies or the Taken series or something like that. Like, this just doesn't, people just don't, maybe it's because he doesn't have a beard in it, I don't know. I think he hadn't reached the height of like popularity and had these kind of iconic roles yet. Which, I mean, I think this could easily be just as iconic as any of these other films, because I think this is a great movie, but it's just, it's kind of a cult film, and it's directed by Sam Raimi, who would later go on to direct the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films, so the first really big Spider-Man films, one of many attempts, and and obviously he did Evil Dead and a lot of kind of crazy horror stuff. I love Sam Raimi's earlier work. This seems like he was still, because Sam Raimi kind of changed a lot, and I think really became a studio director, and just sort of went, like his stuff that he's doing now, which the guy's like 60 years old now. But like his Oz movie, to me, it didn't feel like a Sam Raimi movie. He's gone the way of even Tim Burton, where you kind of have these auteur directors and these very stylistic themes and stuff that these directors have. But it seems as they got older, they just kind of became studio directors, where I don't know how involved they really are sometimes, or how much of their power creatively they give up, because Sam Raimi just, it doesn't seem like he's the same. He attempted to do Drag Me to Hell as like this sort of old school Sam Raimi horror flick, and everybody kind of called it that, but realistically, I don't think that film worked, and I thought it was a boring, awful attempt at old school Sam Raimi. I don't know, guys, he just hasn't been the same since Spider-Man, so I don't know, but I love this era for him, and I really like his movie The Quick and the Dead as well, a Western he made. That gets swept under the rug too, man. It has a young Leonardo DiCaprio in it. The cast is amazing in that. Check that movie out. Maybe I'll review it one day too. But yeah, no. As far as Darkman goes, it's essentially like a Phantom of the Opera type of inspired film, and it's about a scientist who ends up getting involved with these crime boss type mobsters who are really interesting in their own right. They're very character kind of, showy, kind of comic booky sort of villains, and they stick out, and like the one main crime boss, he collects people's fingers by cutting their fingers off with like a cigar cutter or whatever, and I thought that was interesting. And the thing is with this is basically, I don't know, he's made this synthetic skin. Liam Neeson, Peyton here, but it burns off and like starts to bubble after 99 minutes or something. And he gets so far with it, and then this whole accident happens, and he becomes horribly disfigured and scarred, and his laboratory's blown up, and everyone thinks he's dead, but he's not. And the next thing you know, he sort of seeks his revenge by, picking off these different guys that were there at sort of his massacre or whatever, by mimicking their face. He goes around and he's in like bandages and wraps and everything, and he kind of plays incognito and stuff and hides and takes their pictures and develops their face, and whatnot in his computer, his awesome Windows, or whatever pre-Windows computer, and scans them and is able to mimic exactly how their face looks, and like basically goes around and like fucks with their life and fucks up their business deals and gets them murdered and stuff by these other crime bosses. Like, it's pretty interesting how this all plays out. It's a very high concept, kind of outlandish at points, so it's kind of hard to really like get into why this stuff is cool and why I like this movie in terms of the plot. But it is, it's basically, that's his power, if you will. His power is he can make himself look like anybody with this skin he made, but it only lasts so long. So there's that kind of tension of he only has so long, and then if he's caught in the wrong time, wrong place, his face starts boiling off, and he's this hideous monster underneath. Meanwhile, you have this whole, his love interest is sort of widowed when he supposedly dies, but then he reaches out to her, and it's like this whole thing where, he's got his own old face back on, but something's not quite right, and, she ends up finding out and everything, like, very, very, very classic. That's what I like about this film. It's very like, I don't know, Hunchback of Notre Dame, or very, like Phantom of the Opera, or, maybe even like Dracula to some degree. It just has that great thing, and this is a Universal film, so it's sort of a very large nod to obviously the old Universal movies, monster movies. That I just named. But I think too, what I really like about this movie, and this was made in 1990, so I mean a year before this, Batman was released, the original Tim Burton Batman '89 film, and this film definitely seems to be Universal's attempt at making their Batman, and and definitely borrowing a lot of stylistic things from this. And I think Raimi and early Tim Burton are kind of like similar, especially when they have a budget. It seems like they really let these guys kind of do things in their own vision, at least at this time. And one of the things that really sticks out in this film is Danny Elfman's score. Danny Elfman did probably the most iconic Batman theme ever. I mean, everybody does the na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na Batman from the TV show, sure, from the 60s, but I mean, the score from the Danny Elfman's score for Batman '89. Da, 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 with all the chimes and different stuff. That is almost like there's such a close resemblance in Darkman's Elfman's score to Batman's Elfman's score. And Danny Elfman is one of my favorite film composers of all time. I mean, I love his band too, Oingo Boingo. They're one of my favorite bands too. I really like Danny Elfman, to be honest with you. He's an interesting guy and musician on top of all that. But, you know, I love his film scores too. He's more, you know, he's sort of synonymous with Tim Burton at this point. But Danny Elfman's done a lot of stuff, a lot of different stuff. Because Danny Elfman, you could say, okay, you got the early Tim Burton work like Beetlejuice, Batman, you know, lots of different stuff. I don't know, very circusy, you know, chimes, circusy. He's always kind of been kind of that sort of movie film composer, Pee-wee and all that. But you know, Danny Elfman has also done some very normal like string, you know, horned instrument. You know, he can do anything. But it's funny, I'm just saying, in this film specifically, it's very, very close to the Batman theme. Not the theme necessarily, but the work he did in Tim Burton's Batman is very similar in this. And also, it just seemed like this was Universal's attempt at doing that, because Batman was a huge fucking film at the time. You know, and also it kind of resembles, I think, Dick Tracy, which was another sort of pulp comic book, you know, film. I think that also came out in 1990 as well. Because, you know, that's just how things are. Everybody sort of goes through like a trend now and a style when something's very successful. But I enjoyed that in the early 90s, late 80s, this sort of like Batman. I would say another one's RoboCop. I think RoboCop, that was a comic book movie. I don't think it was sort of, you know, known to be one like Batman, obviously, but it was this sort of comic book movie that had this sort of quirky, kind of oddball humor, and yet it could be this, you know, sort of action, sort of violent film. You know, this film is sort of violent. I don't think... let me look here. It is... I don't see it on here. But yeah, I think the big difference here is that this is an R-rated film. Which, God, nowadays you would not see an R-rated superhero film unless it's Deadpool, apparently. But, you know, the fact that they would go and say, hey, let's make an R-rated superhero film, like, no problem, and try to make it as big as Batman is kind of, you know, telling you something there. Like, the warning signs are there that it, you know, wasn't going to work. But I don't know, though. The film kind of, to me, didn't seem like an R-rated film. It had a little bit of gory moments here and there, but I mean, I don't even think the language was that bad. There might have been an F word or two, but this felt like maybe they were trying to go for a PG-13, but they just couldn't get it for whatever reason, you know. But yeah, I know it's been a while, guys. Things have been tough in a way. I have not been wanting to make a lot of videos due to the way the world has been with COVID. I've been feeling very uninspired to do creative things, unfortunately. But, you know, I'm not too sure how this video is really going to turn out. But I hope everybody is cool and staying safe and, you know, just rocking and fucking rolling, I guess. So, you know, check out Darkman. I recommend it. Maybe stay tuned, and I'll do some more of these, guys. Well, thanks for everything. Please hit a like, a subscribe, hit the notification bell, and all that good stuff. Peace the fuck out.